Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. Definitely appreciate the support. This is the defensive toolbox. Obviously I only have one filled in. I'm just showcasing how this particular coverage plays against different formations. I already dropped a video on how it plays against 2x2 sets. We're talking about quarters match. You can call it mod. And obviously it's under the double high safety structure defense, middle of the field open. So why don't we go ahead and get right into what this video is about. This video is going to be about how it plays against trips sets. So as I flip over here I have the quarters mod at the top of the screen because that's the defense we're going over. And I have 2x2, 3x1, 3x2, 3x0, 4x1. And then I have traditional splits on the left. So you could have reduced split or tight set type formations with 2x2. So the list goes on and on. We went over 2x2 sets in the traditional sets of 2x2. Why don't we go ahead and get into the 3x1 version of this, and let's go over the assignments really quickly. Alright, so here's a screenshot of a 3x1 set. And the reason why I went with a 2x2 set in the first video is because that's always the boring part. But once you learn that and how quarters plays against that, that's really like the foundation to me. Everything becomes a lot more easier when you transition into learning how it deals with other formations, okay? Because everything just kind of translates over very well. It's just kind of easier to grasp. That's why I think the 2x2 set, learning just traditional quarters man match is your best bet, okay? Because back to the 2x2 set, if we're in quarters man match defense, regular quarters, you guys know what the reads are. The weak side corner here is reading 1 to 2, okay? The safety here is reading Q to 2 to 1. It's easier if you just knock out the Q, but I just have to throw the Q in there. Okay, so just 2 to 1. Your quarter flat player is a match 2 out player, or you can say he reads 2 to 3. The 3 receiver hook player is he just relates to the number 3. You can put 3 to 2, okay, but it's easier just to see it as just he relates to the number 3. And then that's it. You don't need to know anything else because this side is exactly the same as this side. You have the same corner on this side reading 1 to 2. You got the safety who's reading 2 to 1. And you got the quarter flat player who's a match 2 out player. Okay? So this translates right over to trips with a simple wrinkle to it. Let's go ahead and take a look. So for anyone who's overwhelmed with learning match and who's responsible for what, I guarantee you, if you just learn how it plays against 2x2 regular sets, it'll just be so much easier for you to grasp little by little how it plays against different formations, okay? So if you remember in a 2x2 set, the corner was reading 1 to 2, right, on both sides. The safety was reading 2 to 1. Well, it's the exact same here with these two players on this side. On the 3x1 side, with the 3 potential receiver threats going upfield, this safety is reading 2 to 1, and this corner is reading 1 to 2. All of their rules are exactly the same. And then your quarter flat player, his rules are exactly the same. He's a match 2 out player, and you can put him down as reading 2 to 3. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at this really quickly. So we're running 4 verts. Take a look at the corner. He's reading 1 to 2. If 1 goes vertical, I got him. And he does, so he takes him man-to-man. Take a look at the safety. He's reading 2 to 1. Does 2 go vertical? Yes, he does, so I have him man-to-man. Alright, so if we take a look at a route combination like this, where the number 1 doesn't go deep and he stays underneath, well, just remember the responsibilities of the corner. He's reading 1 to 2 mod. Mod as in man on demand or man on deep. So because 1 doesn't go deep, then he gets his eyes on number 2, and he's able to man-to-man a deep route by the number 2, playing outside leverage here. Okay, now in the same type of route combination, the safety who's reading 2 to 1, he's reading 2 to see if he goes vertical, and because he does, he converts into man-to-man coverage inside leverage on this route. And that's why in certain route combinations, you can look at it before you even snap the ball, and you'll know who will get double covered in a quarters mod type of defense like this. So as you can see, nothing has changed so far from what we learned from 2x2. What about in a route combination as we see here? What if the number 2 decides to stay shallow? Well, the safety, who's reading 2 to 1, does 2 go deep? No. So then he will look for 1 on an inside breaking deep route, and he can rob, post, dig to curl. And as you can see here, that deep dig route gets double teamed, right? Because the corner is reading 1 to 2, 1 goes deep, so I got him. The safety was reading 2 to 1, 2 goes under, so I don't have him. So I look for 1 going deep, and he's able to double that route. So now we can go to the quarter flat. Remember, he's a match 2 out player. He really reads 2 to 3. And the number 2 really only has 3 options when you think about it. Okay, he can go up, out, or in. If he goes up on a vertical pattern, then your quarter flat player has to reroute that receiver at the LOS, and that's so he can help out his safety, who will take that player deep up the field, as we see here. Okay, so if you start manipulating your quarter flat player to where he doesn't jam, you're putting your safety in a world of hurt, because it's going to be harder for him to defend a deep route. Now, what about this route combination where the number 2 goes out? Well, he's going to man that route, the quarter flat, because he's a match 2 out player. If 2 goes out, I have him, as we see there. Now, if the number 2 goes inside, remember, it's exactly the same as it was in the 2x2 set. Remember, in the 2x2 set, if 2 goes in, he will squeeze on that route, eyeing the number 3 to see if the 3 goes out. In the 2x2 set, the 3 was the back, so he would squeeze on the number 2, and then if the back leaked out, he would grab him in the flat. Well, the only difference is now it's the tight end. So he's going to squeeze on the in route just a bit, and then with the number 3 coming out, he just matches the 3 out to the flat, as we see here. So nothing has changed. Everything is really exactly the same as how it was in the 2x2 set. So as we can see, it's pretty much the same when you think in terms of how it plays the 2x2 set. Remember, we have the quarter and the safety both playing, one's playing 1 to 2 mod, the other one's playing 2 to 1. And then you have your quarter flat player who's a match 2 player out to the flat, or a flat 2-3 is what I like to call them, okay? Now, where we have a subtle change is, of course, when we're dealing with trips. And the reason why we have this subtle change is because of the overload that the offense has presented with the formation. So if you think about it in a 2x2 set, if we got 4 verticals, everyone would be accounted for deep up the field, right? But in this formation, if you think about it, if 1 goes vertical, he would take up the corner. If 2 goes vertical, he would take up the safety. So in that situation, what if the number 3 goes vertical? Okay, you wouldn't want him running wild up the field with no one capping the route. And that's where we get this safety on the back side and what his responsibility is for in the trips formation. He is going to take the vertical of the number 3 from the strong side. And that's where we get the subtle change in this particular formation as opposed to a 2x2 set. So we can watch that here. Watch the backside safety against 4 verts here. Again, he takes the vertical of number 3. So if number 3 goes deep, then that's the safety's responsibility there, as we see here. Okay, we can watch it again. Backside safety is going to poach over post snap. You'll see it immediately right at the snap of the ball. He's poaching over, and when 3 goes vertical, he's able to take that route man to man. So that's where quarters coverage should theoretically be fairly strong, and that's when you have 4 verts, because we have defenders to man up a route combination like 4 verts. Now in a situation like this, what if the number 3 doesn't go vertical? I'm going to hot route him underneath to an out, but if he stayed to an underneath in, it would still be the same. Well, now because I don't have anyone to defend, talking about the backside safety here, well then he can play more so post control, as you see here. He goes to the post, he's able to provide help in the middle of the field. He's really, in this situation, he can do a number of things. He can play underneath, he can look to double the backside 1, etc. Okay, but he's able to do that because he's freed up by the fact that the number 3 does not go vertical. So I really don't have a technical name I can really give this guy. I'll just call him a poach 3. Because, you know, again, if 3 doesn't go vertical and he stays underneath, well then he's able to poach over to the middle of the field, okay? So, I mean, look how close we really get to kind of understanding this. You know, if you think about it, okay, well, what about this player over here? Well, the backside corner is in a MEG technique. MEG is just an acronym. In football, you know, acronyms and alliteration is king, okay? MEG just stands for man everywhere he goes. So if the number one runs a slant, a drag pattern, an out, doesn't matter whatever he does, you are just man-to-man on this player, okay? And it's really the same for your quarter flat on the weak side, this player here. He's MEG on the number two, man everywhere he goes, okay? Now there are exceptions to that rule. So like if number two were to go strong side, he can carry him to another defender, but it's just easier to understand if you just look at it from a base perspective, where your corner, backside corner is obviously always MEG, and I just look at it from this perspective where your weak side quarter flat is just MEG the majority of the time, because most of the time this running back is going weak side if he goes out into a route, okay? So we can take a look at this, a comeback pattern in the flat. Our quarter flat here should flare out with the flat, and obviously our backside corner should man-to-man that route on the backside. And of course, in that route combination, our backside safety is able to poach inside because the number three actually ran an out pattern. So, you know, the last defender in the defense, to where we got to assign some rules to, is your three receiver hook player. Now, it's fairly simple what he's supposed to do. He's relating to the number three. It's really the same no matter what quarter's defense you call. Your three receiver hook player relates to the number three, okay? Now, I've noticed while on the practice field, there's a lot of bugs when it comes to the three receiver hook player, because he's supposed to relate to the number three. So as we see here, you see how the tight end goes inside? Well, the three receiver hook player should take that route no matter what, okay? And I think it's called match, carry, deliver, where you match a route if you're supposed to match it, and you stay on that player until you're able to carry him and deliver him to somebody else. If you can't deliver him to someone else, then you just do not come off of the route. And that's the problem with the three receiver hook player. In route combinations where the tight end goes inside and he has no one to, as we see here, you notice how he matched the route, but then he lets him go as if there's someone to deliver him to, and there wasn't, okay? So I think he's probably the biggest bug in this coverage from what I've seen in a 3x1 set. So usually what I do is when I play a particular defense and I know the rules and assignments, and I notice that there's a player that's always not playing in an optimal manner when playing the defense, or is kind of bugged out, well then you know that's the player that you typically want to use her, so we can play it correctly, like in that instance right there, and actually carry the number three inside, okay? So that's really it, okay? There's one last thing, and that's the run fits, okay? Now, some people may not think that run fits are important, but they really are. In a quarter's defense, your safeties are able to fit the run. So that was a run to the left. This is a run to the right. So if a run were to go right, then we have our fit responsibilities as safeties. And as you know, the quarter flat player is responsible for a run fit as well. So this is quarters coverage. Take a look at both safeties at the snap of the ball. We're running the ball, and look at how they took 2 steps forward during that whole process of the quarterback getting the ball and handing it off. Now this is 2-man. Look at this major difference. In that same time span, the safeties actually backpedaled. And that's because when you're in 2-man, the safeties are not in the run fits at all, okay? As opposed to quarters coverage, they actually do have run fits to fit down and to be a lot more aggressive in the box, okay? So, I mean, there you have it. If we take a look at the responsibilities of the defense against trips formations, now you know everyone's rules and assignments as we add in our 3 receiver hook player who's responsible for relating to the number 3. If you're going to user a particular player here, I usually like to user the backside safety, the read 3 poach strong. But after looking at this on screen and going through the practice field, I noticed that the 3 receiver hook player is probably the one that you do want to use her, okay? So if we go back to our defensive toolbox, we started with quarters, okay? But we're actually playing a solo coverage. when we select quarters and they come out in trips. They're really playing a subtle, different type of coverage as opposed to just straight quarters. But this is what, you could potentially call it. You can call it, I mean, they have different names, different coaches have different names for whatever, but understanding the assignments. Okay, so they check into solo when you play quarters against trip sets. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. And as you graduate to different formations, a lot of the verbiage and the assignments really translate fairly easily, because you learn 2x2 sets first. It's always, once you learn that formation and how quarters play against it, then it's easier to understand cover 6, cover 9 match, palms coverage. Again, it's just easier to kind of grasp in the concepts of everything against any formation. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I believe the next video I'll get into palms coverage maybe. And then we can get into why in certain situations, theoretically, palms would be a better coverage to run as opposed to quarters, and why professional teams would go to one coverage as opposed to another. I'll leave it at that, guys. Peace.